When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the ceiling fan, spinning slowly in that lazy rhythm it always had in my old college dorm. I sat up in bed abruptly, heart hammering. The air smelled faintly of coffee and detergent. The small shelf on the wall was packed with the same books I had owned as a student. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was an old model. The lock screen read, September 12th, 7:03 a.m. Oh, that couldn't be right. My breath caught. I had died. I remembered dying. I remembered Damon Blake's hands on the back of my head, pushing me into a toilet, his voice a venomous hiss. "She's dead because of you." I remembered the chill of the water. The agony. The silence. No. I was here. Back in this bed. Alive. I scrambled to the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, 22 years old again. Skin smooth. No dark circles. No faint line from the C-section scar. No scar on my wrist from when I had tried to claw my way out of that marriage. I fell to the floor, my legs giving out beneath me. A sob rose in my throat. I wasn't dreaming. This was the day it all began. A knock on the door pulled me back. "Elena? You awake?" came a voice. That voice. Damon. I wiped my face and stood, bracing myself before opening the door. He stood there, dressed in a navy windbreaker, a lazy smile tugging at his lips, hair still damp from a shower. He looked like the Damon I had first fallen in love with. But I could still feel his hands on my neck. The weight of his betrayal. The ice in his eyes when he killed me. He had once been my everything. Then he became my end. "Morning, babe," he said casually, stepping inside and tossing a brochure onto my desk. "Some of us are heading to the mountains in a few days. Whitewater rafting. One of the most extreme courses in the country. Thought it'd be fun for my birthday." His birthday. It was the day he brought it up back then. I picked up the brochure. A slick, glossy thing with bold red lettering. 300-meter drop. Fastest rapids in the region. Not for the faint of heart. I had begged him not to go. I had shown him articles, pleaded with him. I told him the risk was too high. He eventually stayed back. Cassandra went. She drowned. And in the years that followed, Damon held me accountable for her death like it was a life sentence. Now I was here again. With the chance to do it differently. I looked up from the brochure and forced a smile. "Sounds exciting." Before he could reply, there was a knock on the open door behind him. "Elena," a chirpy voice rang out. "You've got to see this." There she was. Cassandra Lowe. All sunshine and smiles, her ponytail swinging, a matching brochure in hand. "I printed a few of these for the group," she said, slipping past Damon and holding one out to me. "It's perfect, right? Damon loves this kind of thing. It'll be the ultimate birthday adventure." She gave me a look, wide-eyed and sweet on the surface, but underneath it, smug. And she turned to Damon with a twinkle in her eye. "I heard it's terrifying. You'll love it." He chuckled, and their eyes met for a beat too long. I remembered thinking back in my last life that they were just childhood friends. Nothing more. I had been wrong. They had always been more. I watched Cassandra bat her lashes at him, her fingers brushing his arm. The same fingers that had clutched him as she drowned. I had thought I was his girlfriend. His future wife. But even as he stood at the altar with me years later, it was her ghost he was kissing. "I don't know," I said slowly, my old voice rising to the surface. "It looks dangerous." Cassandra tilted her head, voice sickeningly sweet. "Oh, Elena. You're not backing out on Damon's birthday plan, are you?" Her gaze sharpened. "He really wants you there. He told me this morning. In my past life I had pushed back. I had said no. Because of that, Cassandra went without us and never came back. Because of that, Damon looked at me every day like I was the one who pushed her into that river." This time I smiled brightly. "Of course not," I said, lifting the brochure. "If it's Damon's birthday trip, I wouldn't miss it." Damon raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Really? Really?" I said calmly. "Sounds thrilling." Cassandra's smile faltered just for a second. "I thought you weren't into this sort of thing," she said, her voice still laced with sugar. "You used to get nervous watching waterfall videos, remember?" I walked past her and set the brochure on my desk. "You changed my mind," I said lightly. Damon laughed. "I knew you'd come around. This is going to be epic." Cassandra stayed quiet. I had never seen it before, how her mask cracked when she wasn't in control. But now in the pause that followed I saw her jaw tighten. She hadn't expected me to say yes. She expected me to resist again. She wanted to go without me. I gave her my most pleasant smile. I'll start packing tonight. As they left, I closed the door and pressed my forehead to the wood. I know what you both did. You Cassandra with your perfect little lies. Your crocodile tears. And you Damon. The man who held me underwater while whispering her name. This time I would not stop the rafting trip. I would go. And I would make sure neither of them ever forgot what the river did. The morning air was crisp with the scent of impending storms. The kind of air that made you feel like the sky was holding its breath. I sat at the corner table in the student cafe, nursing a lukewarm coffee, pretending to read a syllabus printout while watching Damon and Cassandra from across the room. They were at the center table laughing. His hand brushed hers. Her eyes lingered on his face a moment too long. They weren't even trying to hide it. In my first life I would have told myself it was harmless. That I was being paranoid. That Damon and Cassandra were just lifelong friends. You can't be jealous of the girl he grew up with, Mia once said, teasing me while scrolling through pictures of the three of us on a ski trip. But now I knew. They weren't just friends. They had never been. Damon had married me, yes. But only because Cassandra died and I was what remained, convenient, willing, and naive. Now that I was back in this time I saw it all. The way they leaned into each other. How his laughter turned deeper, warmer around her. The way she always touched him when she spoke, marking him like he belonged to her. Damon caught me watching and grinned, waving me over. I tucked my bitterness behind a smile and walked toward them. Elena. Cassandra beamed, patting the empty seat beside her. We were just talking about the rafting trip. You're definitely coming, right? I settled in without breaking the smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. That threw them off. Cassandra's eyebrows rose. Damon looked vaguely stunned. You're sure? He asked cautiously. I mean, it's pretty intense. Not really your thing. Oh, I know, I said sweetly. That's what makes it exciting. Once in a lifetime and all that. Cassandra tilted her head, trying to read me. I thought you hated water sports. Last time we went paddle boarding you stayed on the shore reading a novel. I sipped my coffee, meeting her gaze. People change, Cassandra. Damon chuckled, clearly relieved. That's the spirit. It's going to be incredible. The drop is insane, look. He pulled out his phone and showed me a video. The raft launched from a cliff's edge, dropping nearly vertically into a boiling mess of white water. The raft disappeared for 2 full seconds before emerging, people screaming inside. Cassandra leaned in beside him, her chin nearly on his shoulder. Isn't it wild? We'll all be so bonded after. She meant bonded with Damon. I knew exactly what she meant. Well, I said, brushing imaginary lint off my sleeve, if it's as dangerous as it looks, we should all gear up properly. You know, actual safety helmets, thick jackets, elbow and knee pads. Cassandra snorted. That's overkill. They give you helmets and life jackets at the site. No need to look like a SWAT team. I looked at her. They give tourist-grade gear. Not safety certified. Damon blinked. Wait, what's the difference? I leaned forward, voice low and serious. The difference between surviving and not. They both looked at me for a moment, confused. Cassandra laughed it off. You sound like my grandmother. It's a rafting trip, not a war zone. I smiled again, letting the insult glide past. Damon, ever the peacekeeper, nodded quickly. It'll be fine. They run it all the time, right? Right, I said. Until it isn't. I stood up. Anyway, I've got some research to do. If I'm going to be flung off a cliff into violent rapids, I'd at least like to land with my bones intact. That afternoon I made several stops. First to a private sporting goods store I had read about in a survivalist blog. I walked out with a military-grade life vest, a helmet with multi-impact certification, carbon fiber elbow and knee guards, a waterproof emergency whistle and a thermal wetsuit liner. The bill totaled $768. Worth every penny. I knew the gear wouldn't just save me, it would help me stay conscious and mobile long enough to make choices. That was something I didn't have the first time. The old Elena believed in group safety. This Elena knew better. I didn't buy a thing for Damon. Or Cassandra. They were adults. And besides, they had each other. The following evening, the rafting group gathered in a common room to meet the park staff and sign liability waivers. The instructor, a lean, tan man named Greg, stood at the front with a worn-out map and an even more worn-out expression. "Now folks, I'll be straight with you. This isn't Disneyland. The course is the steepest legal drop in the state. And you'll be signing these forms." He held up a clipboard, acknowledging that you understand the risks. Drowning, concussions, broken bones, hypothermia. "If you're not confident, do not sign." Murmurs swept through the room. I watched Damon, who hesitated as he took the form. His pen hovered above the line. I stepped beside him, placing my own signed sheet on the pile. "Still thinking about it?" He looked at me troubled. "Yeah. Just, seems riskier than I thought." I tilted my head. "It is. But you're the one who wanted extreme." Cassandra slipped between us. "Damon, don't overthink. You'll be fine." She signed her form without reading it and winked at him. "Why, all right?" I suppressed a grim smile. "You only live once." She should have read the fine print. Damon glanced from her to me and finally scribbled his name on the form. "Excellent," the instructor said. "Gear pickup is tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Don't be late. And wear something that dries fast. Or doesn't get wet at all." I already had my gear packed in a sealed container with silica packets. I wasn't risking a thing. Back in my dorm that night, I stared at the waiver in my hand, my extra copy. In my first life, I had begged Damon not to sign it. When Cassandra died, he said I should have let her go with someone else. That if he'd gone with her, he might have saved her. He told me over and over again, she was calling for me and I wasn't there. You were. In that life, I had protected them both. I told Damon it was dangerous. I sent him news articles. I warned him that if anything happened in the mountains, help would arrive too late. The rescue crew was underfunded and lazy. I had tried to save them. And for that I was hated. This time I would save no one. This time I would smile and say, "Let's go." The next morning our group gathered in the parking lot. Everyone looked excited, some half awake and hungover, others giddy like they were heading to a theme park. Cassandra strolled in wearing tiny athletic shorts and a skin-tight top, no sleeves, no helmet. "Where's your gear?" I asked, pretending to sound curious. "They'll give us everything at the site," she said, flipping her hair. "Besides, I want my pictures to look cute." Damon gave her a once-over and whistled. "You'll melt Instagram." I smiled and opened my trunk. Inside, neatly packed, full-body wetsuit, pads, gloves, rescue-grade helmet, and a sealed pouch with emergency supplies. I pulled out a small bottle of thermal grease and applied it to my joints. "What the hell, Elena?" one of Damon's friends joked. "Are you planning to wrestle a bear?" Cassandra burst out laughing. "She looks like she's going to space." I just zipped up my vest and adjusted my knee guards. Let them laugh. Let them wear tank tops and bring no helmets. Let them trust a waiver and a park employee who'd rather check Instagram than check weather alerts. They had each other. I had survival. The mountain air was sharp and cold as the bus wound its way up the narrow pass, tires crunching over gravel and wet earth. Sunlight filtered through the fog-draped trees, casting long shadows on the road. The mood on board had shifted. Gone was the morning's laughter, replaced with a strange electric hush. I sat by the window, my gear bag on my lap, watching the trees blur past. Cassandra, seated just behind me, was loudly narrating her dream from last night. We were in the raft and it flipped, but Damon dove into the water like a hero and saved me. It was so cinematic. Her voice was bright, giddy. Damon chuckled. "Hopefully that's not prophetic." I glanced sideways at him. He was slouched in the seat across the aisle, his fingers fidgeting with the zipper on his jacket, leg bouncing in a nervous rhythm. His jaw was tight. Not fear exactly. More like unease. His instincts were warning him. And yet, as always, Cassandra leaned in, wrapped her arm through his, and whispered something I couldn't hear. His foot stopped tapping. He nodded. I turned back to the window. Still so easily led. The rafting site was tucked into the base of a wide ravine, where the forest ended and a steel-railed path led down to the river. A small outpost cabin sat at the edge of the lot, where a park guide stood waiting beside stacks of safety gear. Below, the river churned like a beast, angry and loud, its surface slick and fast. As we filed off the bus, Greg, the instructor from the waiver session, clapped his hands. "Welcome to the edge," he said with a toothy grin. "We'll be splitting you into 3 rafts, 6 per raft. Instructions are simple. Don't remove your helmet, don't stand up in the raft, and for the love of God, do not unbuckle your vest. This river eats the arrogant. He let that hang for a moment before continuing. You'll pair up by weight and strength for balance. If you can't swim, speak up now so we can seat you properly. Cassandra laughed and raised a hand. That would be me. Water is scary. She nudged Damon with her elbow. Guess you're stuck saving me again, huh? He smiled weakly, but I could see it, he didn't want to laugh. Damon, I said gently, stepping beside him, you don't have to go if you don't want to. He looked at me almost startled. I know you were hesitant yesterday. It's okay to change your mind, I added, not as a challenge but as an offering. His mouth opened then closed. He looked toward Cassandra, who was now filming a selfie video by the water. I can't back out now, he said finally. She's been looking forward to it for weeks. Of course she had. Then let's get ready, I said, turning away before he could see the flicker of satisfaction cross my face. The changing cabin reeked of wet neoprene and bug spray. I suited up quickly, wetsuit on, helmet strapped, gloves tightened. I tucked my hair into a tight braid under the helmet and checked every buckle twice. My reflection in the small mirror looked foreign. Unfazed, eyes steady, face unreadable. From outside I heard laughter. When I stepped out, Cassandra was already in full performance mode. She wore a bright pink sports bra under a cropped tank top and the thinnest waterproof shorts I'd ever seen. Her helmet, a cutesy, unbranded model, sat loosely atop her head, strap unfastened. Her life jacket hung off one shoulder like an accessory. Do I look ridiculous? She asked Damon, twirling. You look... He trailed off, caught between embarrassment and arousal. I adjusted my gloves and walked past them. Cassandra caught sight of me and let out a snort. Elena, are you trying to repel all forms of sunlight? I smiled serenely. Just being safe. Style points don't matter much when you're pinned under a rapid. Her smile faltered just for a second. Damon looked at me uncertain. You think this stuff is overkill? Not for me, I replied. And definitely not for someone who can't swim. That landed. Cassandra's cheeks reddened. Damon glanced at her vest, still undone, but said nothing. I said it for him. They sell certified helmets in the shop, by the way. You might want one that won't crack on impact. Cassandra rolled her eyes but said nothing. Damon hesitated, then nudged her toward the store. Just humor her, okay? I didn't wait to see what cheap item he bought her. I already knew he wouldn't spend more than a few dollars. In my past life he let me pay for everything, from his food to his gear. He said his pride kept him from getting a job. I thought I was helping him. Now I knew I was funding my own demise. Back at the river's edge, the staff lined up the rafts. They were slick red beasts with black handles along the sides. Foam paddles were distributed and assigned. Greg stood on the dock, clipboard in hand. Group A, Raft 1. Damon, Cassandra, Elena, he read off. I stepped forward, suppressing a sigh. Cassandra immediately clung to Damon's arm. Can I sit with you, please? I'm nervous. Greg started assigning seating based on strength and weight. I was supposed to sit opposite Damon to keep the raft balanced. Cassandra was meant to sit across from another girl. But Cassandra pouted, voice rising. Please, Greg? Damon makes me feel safe. The guide looked mildly annoyed but shrugged. Fine. But if the raft flips, it's your problem. I stepped forward, voice neutral. I don't mind at all. Let them sit together. Damon looked at me quickly. You sure? Of course, I said sweetly. Besides, who knows who'll make it back alive? He laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. Cassandra didn't wait for confirmation. She dragged him into the raft with a giddy squeal. I watched them settle in together, legs pressed side by side. In the distance, I could hear the rush of water growing louder. I gripped the raft's handle and climbed aboard. Let them sit close. Let them pose for pictures and laugh like they're on vacation. Let them pretend this river is just a game. Because when it begins, the water will not care who they love or who they lie to. And neither will I. The raft rocked gently as it pushed off from shore, slicing through the still surface of the river. The water here was calm, glass-like, reflecting the sky in scattered silver and pale blue. Birds called in the distance, and the scent of pine and wet rock filled the air. Greg stood at the bank, raising his arm. First stretch is smooth, he shouted. Enjoy it while it lasts. Paddles dipped into the water in unison. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the rhythmic swish of strokes and the occasional creak of rubber against current. "See," Cassandra chirped behind me. "Totally safe. I told you, Elena, you didn't need to come dressed like Iron Man." I didn't look back. Instead, I kept my eyes on the water, watching for the first bend. The rapids weren't immediate. They wanted you to relax first. Get comfortable. Lower your guard. Just like Damon had. Damon chuckled beside her. "You do look kinda overgeared, Elena." "Prepared," I said without turning around. "There's a difference." Cassandra huffed. "Well, you're going to roast and all that. Honestly, it's not even cold." I didn't respond. Let her bark. We glided through the early stretch, the current slow and pleasant. I couldn't deny the beauty. The emerald canopy of trees overhead, moss-lined cliffs hugging the river's edge, and sunlight sparkling on the surface like broken glass. But even beauty can kill. Somewhere around the third bend, Cassandra's theatrics began. "Oh no," she said with exaggerated drama. "I'm so hot." She pulled off her already loose life jacket and tossed it behind her. "There. Much better." "Cassandra," the guide at the back of the raft warned, "leave your jacket on. That's protocol." "I can't breathe in it," she said sweetly, adjusting her top so that it clung even tighter to her chest. "I'll put it back on before the real rapids." I turned slightly, watching her pour a bottle of water down her shirt with a giggle. Damon's gaze locked on her instantly. Their flirting was obvious now. They leaned toward each other, splashing and laughing like they were in a private pool. Her top, now soaked, clung to her like second skin. "You two should take a picture," I said mildly. "Might be your last." Damon blinked at me, then gave a sheepish laugh. Cassandra rolled her eyes. "God, Elena, do you always have to be so dramatic?" "No," I thought. "Just today." We drifted into a bend surrounded by cliffs. The air grew colder. Shadows thickened. Ahead of us loomed a jagged arch of stone, a natural cave tunnel carved by years of flowing water. The mouth of it gaped like something ancient waiting to swallow us whole. As our raft entered the darkness, the light behind us faded. The sounds changed, voices became echoes, paddles a soft slap against unseen water. Then I heard it. Soft shuffling. Giggling. Rustle. And then, unmistakably, the wet sound of kissing. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The cave acted like an amplifier. The smacking of lips, a slight moan, and the unmistakable hush of Damon whispering Cassandra's name echoed around us like a mockery. Even the others noticed. One of Damon's friends shifted awkwardly in his seat. Another cleared his throat. But no one said anything. The same way no one said anything when Damon held me at night and muttered Cassandra's name in his sleep. I stared into the black ahead of us, letting the cool air wash over me. Enjoy it, I thought. It'll be the last time you hold her like that. The raft emerged from the tunnel, blinking into sunlight again. Cassandra smoothed her hair, lips swollen, cheeks flushed. "Elena," she said breathless, "wasn't that fun?" I gave her a calm, unreadable smile. "The real fun's just beginning." Within minutes, the river's temperament shifted. The current quickened. The banks narrowed. We passed a warning flag, bright orange, flapping violently in the wind. Ahead, the water turned foamy white. "Get ready," the guide shouted. I adjusted my grip on the paddle, fingers firm and steady. The raft bucked beneath us as it hit the first of several smaller waves. Each impact sent spray flying across our faces. Cassandra squealed beside Damon, clinging to his arm. "Big drop ahead," someone shouted. We crested a rise and then saw it. A massive cliff edge loomed before us with nothing but roaring water below. The infamous 80-meter drop. The raft tilted forward. "Brace." The raft plunged. Screams pierced the air. Water exploded around us like a cannon blast. We went weightless, completely airborne for half a second, before slamming into the river below. The impact knocked the breath out of me. Water surged over the sides, nearly filling the raft. And then, chaos. A massive wave crashed sideways, flipping several rafts behind us. Ours slammed into a rock wall and jolted violently. Cassandra screamed. Her slippery, soaked hands lost grip and she flew out like a rag doll. The raft tilted again. Damon lunged, not toward me, not even to stabilize the raft, but straight into the water, arms outstretched for her. I was tossed sideways and slammed into the side wall. A sharp pain bloomed in my shoulder as I hit a paddle, but my gear held. The raft flipped. Underwater. Darkness. A whooshing roar all around. I didn't panic. I let the vest pull me up. My helmet hit a submerged branch but absorbed the blow. I broke the surface, coughing, gulping air. Then I looked around. Cassandra was flailing, shrieking at the top of her lungs, even though the water here barely reached her shoulders. Help! Damon! She had no idea which way was which. Her movements only made her sink more. And Damon, he swam to her like his life depended on it. I treaded water, spitting out the river from my lungs, silently watching him. His arms were strong, practiced. I remembered the lessons. I had paid for them. In another life, I'd scraped money from my part-time tutoring job to buy him swim sessions. Just in case. Just in case the world threw him into the deep end. And now here he was using those skills not to save me, but her. He wrapped an arm around Cassandra's waist and pulled her up to the overturned raft. Elena, someone called. I waved an arm to signal I was okay and swam toward the nearest paddle still floating nearby. My arms burned from the current, but I kept my breathing steady. When I finally reached the raft, Damon had already climbed back in with Cassandra curled against his chest. Thank God, she whispered. If you weren't here. I pulled myself up using the rope handles. My shoulder ached, but I was uninjured. Damon looked over, startled. Are you okay? I nodded, brushing water from my face. Cassandra turned to me with a strained laugh. Don't be jealous. It was just reflexes. I screamed louder. I looked at her, fully composed. Of course. You've always been good at screaming. She blinked. Damon frowned. One of his friends, Marcus, looked at me, eyes wide with something between sympathy and guilt. He'd seen it too. Damon didn't even glance at me in the water. But I didn't care. Let them play lovers. Let them put on a show. The real drop, the one that matters, was still ahead. And it wasn't the river that would claim them. It was me. The moment we were all back in the raft, Cassandra clung to Damon like a vine around a tree. She was drenched, shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around his torso. Her face was streaked with water, and maybe a little blood from a small scrape on her temple, but mostly it was just drama. Oh my God, she whimpered. I really thought I was going to die. Damon, You're safe, he whispered, arms around her shoulders. I've got you. I sat across from them, straight-backed, silently adjusting my helmet strap. Cassandra buried her face in his chest, still trembling as if the water had nearly dragged her under. The river in that stretch hadn't even reached her shoulders. He could have walked out. Damon hadn't looked at me once. Not when I surfaced coughing, not when I climbed back into the raft with aching limbs and water in my lungs. His entire world was her. He stroked her soaked hair, whispering soothing words. My eyes stayed fixed on the river ahead. She can't swim, he finally said, as if that justified everything. As I recall, I said evenly, neither could you once. That made him pause. His eyes flicked toward me. I smiled faintly. I paid for those lessons, remember? Cassandra looked up sharply. Don't make this about you, she said with a watery laugh. I panicked. You shouldn't be jealous just because Damon rescued me. She said it like a joke, but the glint in her eyes told me otherwise. I tilted my head. Jealous? Of a man who didn't even glance at me when I nearly went under. She blinked. I'm not angry, I added softly. It's just interesting. Damon shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, one of Damon's friends, shot me a long glance, one that said he saw it too. Another guy, Brett, muttered something under his breath and shook his head. They were starting to notice. The cracks were showing. But Cassandra only nestled closer like a child. You saved me, she whispered. The raft rocked gently as it caught another current, swaying between boulders. Ahead the river narrowed again. Greg in the safety boat further down signaled. Next drop coming. The murmurs and nervous laughter returned. I adjusted my grip on the paddle and scanned the path ahead. The real drop was close. A sharp curve in the river banked left toward a jagged cliff face. Below that, the river dropped steeply, one of the largest plunges on the course, nearly 200 meters. It was notorious for turning rafts into wreckage. Everyone brace. Greg's voice echoed. My pulse didn't rise. I tightened my straps one last time and exhaled. The raft surged forward. Water exploded against the sides and then, we plunged. Cassandra screamed. The raft went airborne again before crashing down with a sickening impact. In the instant after we hit, a side wave slammed into us, pushing the raft sideways toward the cliff. I saw it before it happened, an unavoidable wall of rock. We collided. The raft tipped then bucked violently. I grabbed the rope handle just as the force hurled Damon and Cassandra outward. I felt the thud of bodies hitting water. My own raft slammed into theirs, absorbing some of the impact but sending everyone off balance. Someone's paddle flew past me. "Hold on." Marcus shouted behind me. I did. But Cassandra didn't. The moment she hit the water, her cheap helmet, thin plastic with a painted-on logo, cracked with a sharp snap. I heard it even over the river's roar. Her face struck something hard. Blood instantly bloomed, dark red and fast, trailing in the current like ink in water. She screamed or tried to, but the sound was wet, muffled. Her mouth filled with water. And she had no life jacket. She flailed wildly, spinning in the rapids, limbs uncoordinated and useless. The thin shirt she'd worn was tangled around one arm, pulling her down. Damon was only a few feet away. He had slammed into the water just behind her but managed to grab onto a protruding rock with one hand. The other reached for her blindly. Cass, grab my hand," he shouted. She couldn't. She was too busy kicking, fighting the current, trying to scream with blood in her mouth. And still, Damon didn't even glance toward me. I was floating nearby, coughing again, treading water with effort but with calm precision. My elbow throbbed. My hip was bruised. But I was in control. Just like last time, Damon used every ounce of strength to try to reach Cassandra. And just like last time, the rescue team was nowhere. I scanned the riverbank. No red flags. No whistles. The outpost above was empty. It wasn't a weekend. The rescue crews had probably gone for lunch or left someone undertrained in charge. Everyone was on their own. Just like I had been. Our raft bobbed sideways, half flipped. A few of Damon's friends scrambled to hang onto the sides. I grabbed Marcus by his shoulder strap and hauled him up. He gasped and clutched the side. "Elena, your arm." "It's fine," I said shortly. "Tell the others to float feet first with the current and protect their heads." He stared at me dazed. "Yow." He shouted the instructions as I steadied myself in the water again. Cassandra was still kicking, barely afloat, eyes wide with pure panic. "Help!" she shrieked, voice cracked. Her arms flailed backward, splashing uselessly. Her head dunked under for 3 full seconds before re-emerging. Damon reached further, nearly losing his grip. "Take my hand," he screamed. She couldn't. He was too busy panicking. In that moment I realized something. Cassandra was never strong. She was never clever. She just performed well. Even in drowning, she played victim to perfection. I let the current guide me toward the center. I found a floating paddle and used it to steer toward a calmer stretch. I was bleeding from the elbow, but it was minor. My vest had held. My helmet was solid. My boots had stayed strapped. My preparation had worked. The others, battered, bleeding but alive, followed my lead. "Float downstream," I told them. "Stay low. Don't fight the current." One of the girls nodded with wide, grateful eyes. "Wait," Marcus called out. "What about Damon?" I looked back. Damon was still gripping the rock. His knuckles were white. He had managed to drag Cassandra closer. Her face was a mess of blood and panic, and she clawed at him desperately. But his other leg was caught, wedged into a narrow crevice between 2 rocks. The river slammed against him again and again. "Help me," he shouted. "Somebody help." I watched him for a long moment. Watched as he chose Cassandra over and over again, even while half his body was being battered. His screams echoed louder than the river. I turned my head and paddled downstream. My voice was calm as I gave more instructions. "When we reach the next bend, look for a flagpole near the bank. That's the regroup point." Behind me, Damon screamed again. The current pulled us away. I didn't look back. The river quieted as we rounded a broad bend, the last of the rapids easing into a wide, slow-moving basin. The shift was dramatic. Roaring chaos gave way to silence, broken only by the labored breathing of those who had survived the descent. I floated alongside the battered raft, directing those who had managed to cling on. "This way," I called out. "Let the current guide you in." Slow strokes. No sharp movements. Marcus, bruised and dripping, nodded weakly. How did you stay so calm? I didn't answer. Not with words. I climbed back aboard the half-submerged raft and reached down to pull up one of the girls, her lips split and trembling. Ahead, the calm pool was bordered by a sandy shore and jagged rocks. Several rescue staff finally appeared, running along the ridge, radios buzzing in their hands. I scanned the horizon. There, two forms drifting slowly into view. Damon and Cassandra. Cassandra floated easily on the current, buoyed by the life jacket Damon had given her. Her arms were splayed out, head tipped back. She looked more dazed than injured, her wounds superficial but dramatic. Damon, however, he was not floating. He was stuck. He had managed to drag himself and Cassandra downstream with what little strength he had left. But his leg was still caught in a fissure beneath the surface, wedged between two rocks deep in the riverbed. He clung to a protruding boulder, chest heaving, his body half submerged in the current. "Help!" he shouted. "My leg's stuck, I can't move." His voice cracked with desperation. I waded into the shallows and called up to one of the rescue team members on the ridge. "We have a man trapped below the drop. Deep rock entrapment. He's conscious but losing strength." The rescuer, a stocky man in red waterproof gear, gave a curt nod and began descending with a rope. Behind me, Cassandra swam to the shore and immediately collapsed onto the sand. She didn't look at Damon. She didn't move to help. She didn't even speak. I stared at her. "Get up," I said flatly. She glanced up, eyes wide, mascara streaked from the spray. "I'm not strong enough. I wouldn't be any help. I almost drowned up there." She hugged her knees, trembling dramatically. "Then stay out of the way," I said, stepping around her. Damon thrashed in the water, waves breaking against his chest. "Elena," he bellowed. "Please, do something." I moved to the edge of the rocks and crouched beside one of the rescue crew who had finally reached him. "What's the situation?" the lead rescuer asked me. "Leg trapped deep in the crevice," I replied. "Pressure from the currents worsening it. He's exhausted." The rescuer nodded and called out to Damon. "Sir, don't move. We're going to try to shift the rock first." "I can't feel my foot," Damon screamed. One rescuer attempted to reposition Damon's upper body while another pulled gently on his trapped leg. The moment they applied pressure, Damon screamed, a deep, raw sound torn from his throat. "Stop. It hurts. I can't. The rescuer backed off. "That leg's deeply lodged. If we keep yanking, we'll break it." A second rescuer tried to slide smaller stones beneath the trapped leg to create space, but the boulder was shaped like a claw, forged over time to trap whatever entered. I took a step back, assessing. Cassandra still sat on the shore. She had found a towel and was now drying her face. One of Damon's friends finally snapped. "You're seriously just going to sit there?" Cassandra's voice was shrill, defensive. "I told you, I'm not strong enough to help. I nearly died." Damon turned his head toward her, panting. "You don't even care." "I do care," she shouted. "But your leg being stuck isn't my fault. You're the one who jumped in like some hero." His face twisted, half from pain, half from realization. "You made me come on this trip. You pushed and pushed. I didn't hold a gun to your head." Cassandra snapped. "You're not some victim, Damon." The other rafters fell silent. Even the river seemed to hush. His jaw clenched. "You don't care what happens to me." "Don't be dramatic," she muttered, turning away again. "You'll be fine." But we all saw it. The cold truth settled over Damon like a second wave. She wouldn't lift a finger for him. Not when it mattered. Not even now. And maybe, just maybe, she never had. The rescue team regrouped. One of them swam over to me. "We're bringing in heavy equipment. It'll take time." "How much time?" I asked. "An hour. Maybe more. Depends how far the rock goes under." "He doesn't have an hour," I said. "Look at him." Damon's skin had gone from pale to bluish. His lips were cracked. His grip on the boulder weakened visibly with each passing minute. He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. Please," he whispered. "Don't let me die here." I crouched again, arms crossed. "I'm not letting you die," I said. "I'm just not rushing to save you either." He blinked, confused. "This is what you wanted, remember? The thrilling birthday adventure. You chose the risk. You made sure Cassandra came. You ignored me in the water. And now, suddenly I'm the only one who's supposed to care. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. I stood turning back to the crew. Do what you have to. Call whoever you need. Behind me, Damon sagged against the rock, the weight of cold water and truth finally pressing down. 20 minutes later, another rescue team arrived with a portable hydraulic drill. The rescuers briefed us. We'll try to widen the gap. If it fails, we amputate. Damon paled. No, you can't. You'll die otherwise, the lead medic said flatly. The drill roared to life. The vibration shot through the rock, and through Damon's body. He screamed. The pain was unbearable. His howls echoed through the cliffs, cutting through the air. Stop. Stop. Brace him, one rescuer barked. Cassandra covered her ears. I remained still. Let him scream. This was the price of every choice he made. Of every time he stood by her side. Every time he looked through me like I was disposable. The drill stopped. Blood spread through the water. The lead rescuer called out grimly. Still stuck. Next phase, cutting tool. A long silence fell. Damon shivered violently. His head lolled back. One eye swollen shut, lips turning purple. Elena, he croaked. I met his gaze. He saw it then, the part of me he'd never known existed. The part that had died in a bathroom and been reborn in a river. Help is here, I said coldly. But it's not me you should have trusted. The cutting tool buzzed as it met stone, its shrill grind echoing off the river walls. Damon screamed again, hoarse, broken, inhuman. The sound carried up the cliffs, across the trees, into the vast open sky above us. The rescuer manning the tool yelled over the noise. We're almost there. Stay with us. But Damon couldn't respond anymore. He was limp now, his upper body barely above the water. His fingers had released the rock. His head lolled weakly with every vibration of the drill. His lips, once flushed with life, had turned a bluish gray. Blood poured into the water. Dark, rich red. Too much of it. And still, Cassandra sat on the shore wrapped in a towel watching blankly. The drill stopped suddenly with a sharp snap. One of the rescuers dove beneath the surface, using a pry bar to widen the gap around Damon's leg. Ready, pull. Two men grabbed Damon beneath his arms and wrenched his body backward. A sickening crack echoed through the basin. Damon didn't even scream this time. He slumped into their arms like a rag doll, unconscious, his head flopping forward. I moved closer as they dragged him up the rocks and onto a stretcher. His right leg was a horror. The flesh had turned gray and purple. Shredded muscle hung in strips, and bone jutted unnaturally through torn skin. Blood clung to his skin in thick, sluggish globs. His toes were black. One of the medics called into a radio. Code red. Massive crush trauma. Risk of necrosis. Prepare the ore. Cassandra finally stood, staggering toward the stretcher. I'll ride with him, she said, voice trembling. The paramedics barely acknowledged her as they hoisted Damon into the ambulance. As she climbed in, I caught a full glimpse of her face for the first time. Her left cheek was swollen and purple, crusted over in places. Angry red lines spread from a gash above her brow. Her skin shimmered with sweat, her eyes glassy. Infection. Even in that moment she was trying to sit delicately beside Damon, dabbing at her wounds with a makeup pad. I turned away. At the hospital, the waiting room buzzed with low voices, the static of TVs, and the occasional cry from another wing. I sat with Marcus, Brett, and the two girls who'd made it through the rapids. We had all been treated, cleaned, stitched, rehydrated. I had a sprain in my elbow and some bruising on my hip, but nothing serious. A nurse came over with discharge forms and water bottles. You're all free to go, she said. There's a rideshare service to the nearby lodges. Just let the desk know. I nodded and stood to leave. Then I paused. Across the hallway outside the trauma or Damon's mother stood with her hands covering her face. Her husband paced back and forth beside her, white-knuckled and red-eyed. A moment later, a surgeon stepped out of the double doors and removed his mask. His leg was too damaged. We had no choice, he said quietly. The amputation was successful, but the tissue had already begun to die. If we had waited longer, he would have gone septic. Damon's mother dropped into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I watched her, arms limp at my sides. She used to call me her daughter. She once gave me a bracelet passed down through generations. In my last life, that same woman had begged me to forgive Damon. Had insisted I stay in the marriage for his sake. She'd never once asked how I was doing. Now she couldn't stop crying for a son who couldn't walk anymore. Somehow I didn't feel a single ounce of pity. The hallway echoed with footsteps. Cassandra emerged from a side room, wrapped in hospital linens, one cheek freshly bandaged. Even beneath the gauze, her skin looked wrong, greenish, inflamed, as if her face was rejecting itself. She stumbled forward, nearly crashing into a nurse. "I need stronger painkillers," she said faintly. "My face, it burns." "You've had a reaction to the water," the nurse replied. "The bacteria entered through the open wound. We've cleaned the tissue, but you'll need follow-up surgery." "My face," Cassandra repeated, horror dawning. "Is it going to heal?" The nurse didn't answer. He didn't need to. Cassandra collapsed onto the bench outside the OR and buried her face in her hands. A soft, broken wail escaped her lips. It rose louder, sharp and primal, a sound not of pain but loss. Loss of beauty. Loss of power. Of everything she'd used to pull the world around her. I left before she looked up. It was nearly midnight when I got home. The taxi dropped me outside the Carter residence, a brick house nestled at the edge of town, porch lights still glowing. My suitcase clanked as I rolled it up the path, legs trembling from exhaustion. The front door opened before I even reached it. "Elena," my mother gasped, stepping outside in slippers and a robe. "What happened? You said you'd be back 2 days from now." I dropped my bag and fell into her arms. He held me tightly, warm and solid. "I missed you," I whispered, voice cracking. "I missed you so much." She rubbed circles into my back, voice thick with concern. "Sweetheart, are you hurt? Did something happen?" "I'm okay," I said. "I just needed to come home." My father appeared behind her, his arms folded. "Who do I need to call? Who upset our girl?" His protective scowl made something break open in me. I buried my face in my mother's shoulder and sobbed like a child. Because this time, in this life, they were here. Alive. Safe. Not driven to frost-bitten death on the streets. Not bankrupted by a man they trusted. They were whole. And so was I. Later that night, after showering and bandaging my wounds properly, I lay in my old bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight crept across the walls. In my mind, I still heard Damon's screams. Cassandra's sobs. The cutting drill. The water. But I also heard something else. Silence. Peace. I closed my eyes. This time I had made it out. Autumn sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the university's admissions building, casting golden rays over the polished floor. Students bustled in and out, excited chatter echoing through the halls as names were called for orientation and ID photos. I stood calmly at the registration counter, submitting my documents. "Full scholarship," the registrar said with a smile. "Impressive. And I see you've already transferred early credits." I nodded, offering a tight smile. "I just like to be prepared." Behind me, a small cluster of girls whispered. I caught fragments. "Is it true? Did he lose the leg? They say he didn't show." I didn't have to ask who they meant. Damon Blake hadn't appeared. It was officially confirmed the following week. His admission had been revoked due to failure to report for orientation or provide post-surgical clearance. The boy who once mocked safety and chased thrills had lost everything. He had gambled his future for a girl who couldn't even stay beside him when he was drowning. 3 weeks passed in quiet. Then one afternoon, as I returned from my first seminar in advanced economics, I found Damon's mother waiting outside my off-campus apartment. He was pushing a wheelchair. In it sat Damon, emaciated, pale and listless. His right leg ended just above the knee, the bandaged stump barely concealed under a thin hospital blanket. He wore a hoodie that sagged off his shoulders and a cap pulled low over his face. His mother stepped forward, face lined with exhaustion and bitterness. "Elena, you loved him once. Don't deny it. He made mistakes, but he's been punished enough. Don't you think it's time to show some compassion?" Damon said nothing. His hands remained limp in his lap. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I opened the gallery and played the video. Damon and Cassandra at their private wedding banquet. Laughter. Champagne. A toast. To my forever. His mother froze. Damon's head jerked up. I locked eyes with her. I know everything. Including the part where you helped arrange the wedding behind my back, after you encouraged him to marry me in the last life. She turned pale. If you ever suggest I owe him anything again, I said coldly, I'll make this video public. I'll ensure every professor, every family, and every employer sees exactly who your son is. They left without another word. The hallway echoed with the soft squeak of the wheelchair. And I never saw either of them again. Time moved forward. I completed my graduate studies with honors. I took over the Carter family business, a consultancy firm once struggling under internal fraud. I restructured departments, cleared out corruption, and made it profitable within 2 fiscal quarters. I was no longer the girl begging for love or fighting for scraps of attention. I was my own center. Meanwhile, news traveled slowly in whispers. Cassandra was forced to marry Damon. His parents, frightened of scandal and desperate to save face, pushed the union through while he recovered in the hospital. Their love story collapsed into ruin quickly. Damon, bitter and grieving the future he lost, turned to alcohol. Wheelchair-bound and angry, he lashed out at everything and everyone, especially Cassandra. Cassandra, whose once perfect face had been scarred beyond cosmetic salvation, began disappearing into clubs and gambling dens. She came home reeking of smoke and wine, sometimes not at all. Damon accused her of using him. She accused him of ruining her life. Their once syrup-sweet romance devolved into Cold War, snarling fights, broken glass, unpaid bills. 2 people, bound by regret, destroying each other slowly. Just as I'd intended. Then one night my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. Elena. The voice was hoarse. Unsteady. I recognized it instantly. Damon. You finally answered, he whispered. Thank God. Silence stretched between us. I could hear traffic in the background, a TV playing somewhere far off. I had a dream last night, he said. You were still my wife. We were happy. Like before. His voice cracked. Why didn't you stop me, Elena? You knew what would happen. You could have said something. You always used to stop me from doing stupid things. I let him speak. I remember now. In our last life you saved me. You stopped me from going. We were happy. We had a child. You were everything. And what did you do with that? I asked quietly. He stopped. You killed me, Damon. My voice was calm. You murdered me in cold blood. Shoved my head into a toilet while I was still recovering from childbirth. You took my family's wealth and threw my parents onto the street. My child died freezing and you stood there watching. A long, broken gasp came through the line. No, he choked. I didn't mean to, I wasn't thinking. You never were, I cut in. And this time I gave you what you wanted. Cassandra lived. You got your true love. You even got to be the hero, for a moment. He began to sob. I lost everything. You chose everything you lost, I said. Please, he begged. Just give me a chance. I'll be better. We can be happy again. We'll start over. Elena, I'll do anything. I already gave you a second life, I said. You used it to destroy yourself. Then with a steady breath I ended the call. I blocked the number. The next morning I received a call from the local police department. Are you Miss Elena Carter? Yes. There was an incident last night. A homicide-suicide. My spine stiffened. The officer continued, voice clinical. A Mr. Damon Blake appears to have stabbed his wife, Cassandra Blake, fatally. He then took his own life. We recovered a phone containing your number. I didn't reply. I let the silence answer. If you're willing, he added, we'll need you to make a brief statement. Of course, I said. And I did. Hurry. Calmly. Truthfully. Then I walked outside and into the sun. At home my mother greeted me at the door, apron dusted with flour. You're back early. The meeting finished sooner than expected, I said. She beamed. Perfect. I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs. I smiled. You always know. She swatted my shoulder playfully. I'm your mother. I sat at the table as she served the meal. Warm light poured through the window. The smell of home filled the air. My father joined us a moment later, nudging a cup of tea my way. For the first time in 2 lifetimes I tasted peace. I closed my eyes, letting the sunlight soak into my skin. The storm had passed. And this time I was free. The end.